So finally here, after talking to you for several months, many months actually, about the spectrum testing, it's pretty cool to see it in person. The coral looks fantastic.
Thank you.
And still running the 3 spectrums. We're what, two months and change?
So 3 different ones have been on since November 1st. So today is middle of January, so 2.5 months, yes.
And I mean, right now we've got them in the 3 different spectrums. We got the Dimitri blue, if we call it that. We've got AB+, and then we've got full spectrum, but they're all running the same par for the same photoperiod. So you've adjusted the intensities, etc., to make them the match in terms of the amount of energy going into the tank, right?
That is exactly what I did. I used the par meter and used this one. So this runs at a 40% intensity, and then these 2 are used the same photoperiod, but they have been adjusted. I think this is about 32 or 35, and this is about 25 in terms of the intensity.
And what we were testing here was to see if the coral changed color if it was run on a different spectrum.
Correct.
And just to clarify here, we know that all of these 3 spectrums were going to work. And we know that because AB Plus is what was used in the Coral Lab, tuned in through a year. You've had great success with Dimitri Blue, and that's kind of more along the lines of the default LED lighting color that people have used. And this, all channels on the Radion, is actually based off of a halide bulb from yesteryear. So we knew they were all going to grow coral. And we thought that the different spectrums might yield different colors, right? And do they?
Well, I must say that I was probably the first skeptic when it came to this. I know that Sanjay runs everything full spectrum, Paletta likes his blues, and when I just got into the hobby, everybody was telling me, run it under blue, this brings out the best colors, and you usually go to somebody else's tank, and that's what you would see. So, long story short, they actually have not really changed color in 2.5 months. So I've been looking at them daily, and so far it's a good thing that we've picked of each coral. So there's different varieties, and each one of them is a pair. So there's control subjects in each one of them. And sometimes I would see under the same light, one coral would kind of go a little bit more reddish, the other one will be greenish, and I'll then find a similar setup under a different light. So there's no real pattern here, and this to me is a proof that your water flow and other parameters matter a lot more in coral coloration, perhaps intensity as well, but not the color spectrum. I'm definitely a convert.
Well, at least not these color spectrums. As in whatever's in these
Correct.
Spectrums is sufficient. We haven't tested the whole smorgasbord, but based on this. And interestingly enough, though, looking at them right now, they actually do look sort of different, some of the coral between each one, right? I mean, I'm looking at this. I mean, this acropore right here looks much more yellow than it does over here, where it looks more of almost a lime green with purple tips, right?
Yeah, under this bird's nest, this looks completely green, whereas this one you can see a lot of red in it.
It's almost pink, right?
But if you were to swap them, you would look. They will look exactly the same way. So.
And we're going to show that in a minute, right? Because at the end of the day, you have a period where the spectrum for a brief period matches, right, across all 3 in the program. And when it does, what looks sort of different suddenly look very similar.
That's exactly what's happening. So at 8 o'clock, they all tune into this to synchronize under the same light, which is the full spectrum on the left. And I can tell you, I had a few reef friends come over, and they looked at the experiment, and each one of them is immediately saying, oh, under this blue, this is a different color. Look at the coloration in this one. It has different pigments and everything else. And all it takes is pressing a few buttons on the Radion, and then they'll see that it's exactly the same coral under this light and this light. And it never stops to amaze them or me.
Very interesting. And we actually have you know, this handy nifty DSLR attachment, which we're gonna get in there, you know, and really look at these guys up close, because you've been photographing, and we've been doing this video blog now for a couple of months, but it is crazy to actually see it in person and see how identical they are in terms of color, and they all look amazing, which I think is just really cool. I mean, they look like they've grown a lot too since when we started this, right?
The growth in them has been actually a bit of a problem, because then now they're touching its neighbors, and I'm gonna have to split some of them up. But growth was great, coloration was great, health-wise it was good, and not only that, another cool part of the experiment that we haven't thought of is the algae, because if you look underneath the tank, you got the same, like different lighting hitting the bedrock, and you can see that there's no real difference, especially under when all going to be the same color. There's no difference in growth of algae, or significant growth of algae. Sometimes I see a patch of algae show up under one of these lights, and sometimes I think it's a spectrum, but if you pay attention, you see that it's pretty much the same pattern, and it's just very sporadic.
It is interesting. I mean, actually, when you look at these racks, you have very similar algae growth, but it's much more noticeable in the warmer, as you go warmer in spectrum. But if you actually look closely, it's really not much different between the three spectrums.
That's exactly what I'm noticing as well.
Very interesting. Well, that's really cool. It's really exciting to come up here and actually see it.
Thank you.
And, you know, I think, you know, maybe we go another month or two just to round it out, assuming that there's enough space here for the coral. But I think, you know, in terms of at least these three spectrums, you know, it doesn't seem like the actual spectrum is changing the color of the coral all that much.
No, my next hunch is it's probably has to do a lot more with intensity. So, but spectrum, I'm a believer. I'm very convinced.
Very interesting. Well, thank you very much, and that's an awesome update. Really cool. Look forward to checking in with you again in a week or two.
Yes, and I want to thank EcoTech for giving me this opportunity to try something out that hasn't been done before. So I'm glad about that.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, thank you.
So